I would like to welcome our first speaker on stage, Sönke Liebau from Stackable, who will be talking about turning maritime data into profit with the help of Gaia-X. He has been working in the big data environment for many years now and supports customers in the design and implementation of solutions. In addition, he's actively involved in various open source projects. Through his extensive experience in building and supporting infrastructures, he has a comprehensive insight into the different needs and frameworks with which big data architecture must function. As CPO, it is in his task to implement this experience in the product in such a way that the solution fully covers the need of customers. Welcome on stage.
Thank you very much. Apparently, I went a bit overboard when writing my summary. All right, hi. I'm Sönke, as was just announced. I did not put a picture up here because I'm right here. You can see me. So today's talk will be split into 2/3 parts. First of all, I'll give a brief introduction into Gaia-X because I assume that not everybody is intimately familiar with it, which is totally fine, don't worry. Afterwards, I'll speak about Maritime and what we're doing with it. And then the third part, which is sort of woven through the rest, is also like the title of the talk, Turning Data into Profit. So the title is a little bit clickbait here, I'm afraid. It won't be the brunt of the talk, but we will get to it sort of along the way. I'll need to go a bit quick because this is a talk that I distilled down from a 45-minute talk into 20 minutes, so there's a lot of ground to cover, but I'll try to get through it. So first of all, Gaia-X, do we actually need it? But since I haven't told you yet what it is, it's a bit tough to answer that question. But to take the summary up front, I think, yes, we do need it. I've taken a bit of stuff from the Gaia-X webpage here, which is, and I also forgot to translate one of the words. I'm sorry here. Don't bother with the text. You can read that on the website if you want to, but I'll explain to you what Gaia-X is actually. So basically, I've debated for a long time whether I should give this intro, whether I should assume that you're all familiar with Gaia-X, but then I looked at the agenda of today and tomorrow, and I think this is one of the only, if not the only, talks that doesn't have AI in the title. So it's a bit of an odd one out, I guess. So I thought it might make sense to briefly explain to you what it is and what we're trying to do with Gaia-X. Or well, what other people are trying to do with Gaia-X for that matter. So basically what it is it's trying to build an ecosystem that allows participants to share data and services, which is possible today. We have the public cloud where you can upload data, work with data, offer services. Services are offered, but these are usually very compartmentalized. So something that works in Google or AWS or Azure that might not work somewhere else. So you have a lot of lock-in effects. And basically the idea is to make data and services openly shareable. So one question to the audience. Who here has or works for a company that produces data? I want to see lots of hands. Everybody produces data. And who thinks that someone else in this room produces data that they might benefit from? See, exactly. So basically, there's lots of data out there, and usually by combining that data, we could gain insights. But it is really, really hard, A, to find that data, or B, to be able to legally use that data, to pay people for using that data, because we're all in it to earn money in the end. So this is, in the end, what Gaia-X is trying to achieve with a concept called data spaces to allow you or your companies to offer data and share data with other companies. So how did Gaia-X came to be? There it is. Basically, Europe looked at its place in the world where IT platform companies is sort of where they're at. So this, what I've taken here is data from 2019 to 2020, I think it is, which you can see Wirecard is still on here, so that wouldn't be there today, probably. This is publicly listed IT platform companies and their market capitalization. So you can see that the US is like the clear winner here. with Asia being a distant second, and then Europe and Africa are somewhere much further down the chain. So basically the idea was we have a bit of catching up to do. So we need something that catalyzes this stuff. And that's basically the idea that was built behind Gaia-X. Looking at a few numbers here, more numbers, we just had numbers. The cloud provider market in Germany, or in Europe, sorry, not Germany-centric here, went up 5 times over the past 2 or 3 years, I think. But if we look at that in comparison to the rest of the world, the market share, like globally with cloud services, actually declined a fair bit from 27% to 13%. So the cloud market exploded worldwide and in Europe, but Europe exploded a little bit less than the rest of the world, so to speak. And that's the sort of idea behind Gaia-X to allow cloud services in Europe or to foster cloud services in Europe to a certain extent. So the next slide is a bit clickbaity, I'm afraid. I've taken a couple of news statements. I'll just put them all up here, sorry. That show you why locking yourself into one of the large hyperscalers might be a bad idea. So this is just a couple of there's been a couple of price hikes, or I think they were called restructuring of prices. It just happened to be a price hike for everybody over the past couple of months, years, I would say. So cloud can be an expensive endeavor, and that's one of these things where sometimes competition is actually not a bad thing. So if you could take your cloud workload and lift and shift it to another cloud provider, then that might have an impact on the prices that those cloud providers can take of you. Whereas today, with a fairly extensive lock-in effect into whatever cloud provider you're at, you simply cannot do it. Well, you can do it, but it'll be a very expensive project. So yeah, basically the idea is to make services more interoperable and be able to move them from A to B much easier. So I'll give you a brief history of Gaia-X. It all started in 2019 at the Digital-Gipfel in Dortmund, where Peter Altmaier and Bruno Le Maire were present and sort of shook hands on going this way. And then everything started, and in 2021, the Gaia-X ASPL Foundation was founded in Belgium, I believe. Well, I know, actually. There were 22 founding members, large corporations, which were sort of the day zero members. And then right after the foundation was incepted, roughly 200 other companies immediately became members as well. Yeah, so the intent of the AISBL is to sort of host all activities around Gaia-X. They are not hosting actual infrastructure. They're not doing the work on writing documents, but they are sort of organizing everything, in charge of marketing. I think they have roughly 20 employees in the AISBL at the moment. So they're sort of like a overarching organizational body, and I'll briefly show you how it's structured in a second as well. It is pay to play, I'm afraid. So you only get to write documents or input into documents if you are a paying member, but the membership fees are actually staggered by company size, and that usually works out fairly well for everybody. The members are, you can see here, well, Germany and France are sort of a little bit dominant, but there is a lot of countries that are in here. We can also see a few United States companies, for example, it is an open idea. All the American cloud providers are very, very much invited to also participate and offer services and consume services in Gaia-X later on. So it is not a strictly European thing, as you can tell by some of the names that are on this list. Yeah, so there's roughly 357 members today, and you can see it sort of grew from the 270 members that we initially started off with. So the core goals of Gaia-X, again, please don't bother with the text. I'll talk about it a bit. There's two sort of main things, like if you look at it from a user's perspective, is data spaces and federation services. And a data space is something that is intended to bring together interested parties from a roughly similar background and enable them to share data amongst each other. And that's usually symbolized by sort of they have the same values, they follow roughly similar processes, they have the same trust anchors, I'll talk about that in a bit, that they get data from. So basically, a data space is about establishing trust between all participants and enabling them to publicly or to trade data amongst each other, to negotiate contracts. And what I was talking about earlier, pretty much, if you have data and want to make that data available to someone else, then you can join a shared data space, and that allows you to have contracts in place, exchange data, and even like log what happens to that data. So there's Gaia-X gives you the framework to enable sharing of data in those data spaces. And then federation services are sort of the underbelly of this. They give lots of services that you need to exchange this data. And then, so basically what Gaia-X does is it defines a process, and then for these federation services, there can be multiple implementations that are Gaia-X compliant and can be used to build up these federations or data spaces. And then the Eclipse cross-federation services component is one of these, would be an example that currently implements this standard. Need to find the next page here, sorry. All right. So this is basically, I think we'll skip this slide for now, looking at the time. Basically, this is an abstract picture of how Gaia-X distributes what they're doing. So basically, we have data on top and infrastructure at the bottom, which traditionally has always been separated, by Gaia-X is trying to bring it together so that infrastructure is commoditized to a certain extent. But yeah, let's talk about data spaces for a bit more. Data spaces don't need to be like compartmentalized. They can be interconnected. So in this instance, for example, in top right, I think, yep, we have a mobility data space, which Catena-X, for example, is a very good example for. They've been going for a few years now. And there are connections to different data spaces. So at the bottom here, we have health, for example, or finance and insurance. And these data spaces can opt to share data with each other by, again, defining shared processes and trust anchors, like who's allowed to symbolize or to certify what's what here. So basically, this is these data spaces are actually intended to cooperate and collaborate, which is where then the overarching Gaia-X thing comes into play. Gaia-X is run very cooperatively. So the General Assembly elects the board of directors. That just happened in March or April, I believe. And then the board of directors appoints management boards, and then below that we have the actual working things with the technical committees who write the documents. And if we look at that, like at the bottom layer there, we have the Data Spaces Business Committee, the Policy Rules Committee. They were actually the first ones to produce anything. So the first thing we had in place in Gaia-X was the rules, as it should be. And then the technical committees write about the actual, like how we implement all the services that are needed to make Gaia-X as a whole work. Which is the main deliverables of Gaia-X. It's actually you can see at the top the Gaia-X architecture document. So if you only read anything, I would recommend reading the Gaia-X architecture document. It's about 60 pages, I think, but it is actually quite readable, and it gives a good understanding of what it is and what it's trying to achieve. And then at the bottom we have the technical specification of how Gaia-X actually can be implemented, because to a certain extent it's only an abstract thing. Sorry. So yeah, basically, all of this, what's on here is actual documents that are readable on the internet in the open. So you can go out and download these and read them. It is lengthy, but at least the architecture document is actually well worth a read, I think, if you're interested in Gaia-X. Right, so the last Gaia-X slide, and then we'll get to the actual maritime data. The Gaia-X digital clearinghouse. This is sort of like the meat of the thing. This is what someone would need to run to become part of Gaia-X. There's lots of stuff in here that actually implements all these services that you need for Gaia-X. So I've talked about being able to find services or find data, which is the catalog that we have on here. So that's a component that you actually run that people can then log onto and find data they can purchase or share. The Gaia-X registry it's sort of the core of Gaia-X. If, for example, insurers want, I don't know, some external trust anchor that can certify that someone is insured with someone else or something like that, then that data space could define that this external organization is allowed to define this trust for data shared in there. And that would then be stored in that Gaia-X registry. We have compliance, we have wizard, organization. So basically, there's a lot of services in here that are defined in the documents I just showed on the slide beforehand that make up Gaia-X and that you can run to become a federator, as it is called. All right, moving on to Gaia-X, or rather MariSpace-X. There was a funding competition in 2021, I think, for roughly 180 million euros. And there were 130 applicants basically for this competition. And in the end, 11 projects were funded, one of whom was the MariSpace-X project with a total volume of 15 million. And it's one of the, if not the largest maritime projects with an industrial focus out there. There's a lot of companies in the project. It's led by North.io from Kiel and Ionos from Karlsruhe. But as you see, Stackable is in here as well, the Fraunhofer Institute, and then we have lots of, since it's about maritime data, a lot of wind park companies in here. Rosen Intel for compute power. So basically, it's a huge conglomerate of companies focused on pretty much building a maritime data space. So basically, the idea is when building a wind park or scanning the ocean ground or within the normal endeavors of running the companies, lots and lots and lots of maritime data is being produced, which today is being used only in isolation, every company for themselves. But by building a data space based on the Gaia-X principles and technical documents, we create the ability to actually reuse that data, maybe even in a different format, for other companies. So basically, all the data that's being produced in the day-to-day operations of all the companies that you just saw there, by creating a maritime data space, we enable those companies to collaborate on that data, to enrich that data, and to share that data amongst themselves and with other people, as we've seen on 5 slides ago or something, because these data spaces can be interconnected. So, I don't know, a travel company that could, for example, also access this data if there's something of interest in there. And that's the sort of benefit of creating these data spaces for shared data. So how is it today before MariSpace-X? You can see at the left we have the data ingestion pipeline. Data is generated in the infrastructure somewhere, it's transmitted, and then it's stored in today quite often data silos, especially like where sensor data is concerned. That's quite often in proprietary formats within like vendor data spaces. It needs to be processed manually, and then to transfer that data, it's usually quite inefficient because it needs to be transferred between the silos, probably converted along the way, and all of it is very like there's lots of friction and it just doesn't work well. Whereas our vision is that the left stays the same, so data still is produced, ingested, transported somewhere, but it's not transported into proprietary silos anymore, but rather into a decentralized data ecosystem, like I just explained, with the data spaces that are developed by Gaia-X, which then allows to sort of collaborate on the data in a shared fashion, reuse data, sell data, which is the title of the talk, to sort of create revenue from data that you have lying around anyway. And it just basically it all just works much better by having a Gaia-X based shared ecosystem like a maritime data space that allows us to share, collaborate, sell, and purchase data in a free and open fashion. And with that, I'm sorry that I rushed it a bit, but since we only had 20 minutes, which I actually hit fairly well, I need to be a bit quick. I'm sorry. I don't know if there's time for questions.
I'm afraid not, sorry.
All right, I'm sorry.
Trying to keep the schedule here. But
Okay.
thanks a lot for your talk, it was very informative.
Thank you very much. I'll leave all of that.